Well, we've unboxed Eternia, we've built it. One of the greatest playsets ever conceived in the history of playsets is currently sitting on my big 6-foot table in the garage with the trolley running, man. And now the question becomes, what about the king? Was he worth the pre-order? The week or the early bird? Early bird? That's right. Let's check out King Grayskull. So yeah, back when we very first jumped on the Eternia train, right? Grayskull was the first week early bird. It was, if you got in there right off the bat and you were one of the very first backers, the people to put down the money without any question, without any never mind, just crossing your fingers and hoping that it was everything it could ever be. It was without a doubt going to fund, and we were going to hit every tier, and it was completely worth the investment. We were the absolute dreamers, the guys that made it happen. Look, I'm not trying to necessarily bulk myself up here, but that's true. If you're one of the people that got in here, there was no guarantee for this. There really wasn't. You took $550 of your dollars. In some cases more, because of shipping and handling and things like that. Some people were paying in the 1,000 territory. And the idea was, we just knew it. We knew it. We had absolute faith that it was gonna work and it was gonna be worth it. Put the money down. First week, no questions, and this crap was dropped on us, man. I don't know about you, but for me, it was actually tough. I wanted Grayskull. I absolutely love Grayskull. I think the redesign, the Revelations Grayskull, is better than the 2000X Grayskull. And this is all subjective. People like what they like, but I honestly really love it. I just think it absolutely works. And so it caught my attention immediately that they were going to do an Origins version of him, and he was going to come with the Eternian set. And at first I didn't even know necessarily that I was going to buy into the set. I wanted to, but it was a lot of money. Then I got to looking at it and I realized how little time I had to make a decision. Before I knew it, man, I was pulling things off the shelf. Because I knew I had to sell some items, and I had to do it now, and I had to do it fast. I had to get the money. So I took some major statues off the shelf, some major items that I'd been hanging on to for a while, sold them, raised about $450, and then paid the rest out of pocket and bought Eternia. And then I waited, and waited, and waited, and waited, and waited, and waited. My Grayskull showed up first, which was true for a lot of people. Some people got their Eternia first, but regardless of how we got it, I was lucky. I made it within the first 4 days of the first week launch. And I got Grayskull. And now the question becomes, was he worth it? Is he awesome? And how does he compare to the absolutely fantastic Masterverse Grayskull? Let's check this guy out. So we'll start off our look here with just the overbox. This is the Mattel Creations special shipping box, and pretty much every single one of these has been really, really cool, to the point where I kind of wish that this etch art right here was also in one of those collaboration books. I bought the 3 art books that currently exist for Motu. I bought the Revelation book, I bought the artwork book for the original stuff, and I bought the artwork book that was released for Masterverse and Origins. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember going through that whole book, and I don't remember seeing any of these. So I kind of wish there was another collaboration book that collected all of these special packing arts and put them together, because stuff like this is really cool. That is really, really cool. I'm lucky that I've kept all of these type boxes, And I'm thinking that I'm probably going to take them all, flatten them out, cut these little side, you know, this, like I don't care about this, but I want to be able to keep this, and maybe I'll just make my own big poster thing or something like that, because I do find it very cool, and I don't want to lose this art. I have gotten rid of a lot of my boxes, though, because as soon as I got the art book, there was really no reason to worry about whether or not I would lose the art. Now, let's open him. He doesn't... Oh, I think he's a slipcover. Awesome. He's a slipcover. That's good news. I like those more than I like a lot of the other ones. So here he is. King Grayskull. Awesome. Let's put our blade away. And let's just go ahead and get right into him. Let's slip this out like that. It does not fold out or anything. That's really cool right here. I'm not 100% sure what this is, in all honesty. I don't know if that's something new, but I will say this, and it needs to be said. The powers of Grayskull. So now it seems like Origins is doing the same thing as Masterverse. Masterverse has a couple of lines under the Masterverse umbrella. And it seems like Origins is doing the same thing, is now we have a Powers of Grayskull, and we have a cartoon line, and we have an Origins line. And the Origins line is then broken into subcategories as well, such as 2003, Princess of Power, so on and so forth. I like that. It doesn't bother me at all. I like the idea that Origins is the umbrella. You kind of understand what the idea is. It's toys that look like they're kind of retro, but they have all the movement and characteristics of a modern-day figure. You understand that umbrella. And then depending on what part of the lineage that you like the most, say you were a Filmation person, that's how you see these characters. Then you can just buy the cartoon line and you understand what you're getting. You're getting if those characters were designed to look like the cartoons back when they came out, but still be kind of the same kind of thing that you got back in the 80s, that's what you're shopping for. I like that. That's very simple, but it's very cool. I'm really into it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I will say that he's standing in front of the Eternian towers, though. He's not standing in front of Grayskull. And so that brings up an interesting question with him in general. Have we seen an alteration of the design? I know we've seen an alteration of the history of the Eternian Battleground. Because the Eternian Battleground, and I've actually had this question on a couple of my things, which it's not that everybody knows things, okay? So, like, I'm not coming down on anybody, because it's true, if you don't know, you don't know. But in the mini-comics, this was like, these were towers that were, like, buried under the earth. And then they like rose up out of the ground because of a situation that was taking place. And then the ultimate battleground was uncovered and it like started a whole new thing for the mini comics. Or rather, it would have started a whole new era for the mini comics dealing with the three towers and so on and so forth. And there were a couple of mini comics that kind of went into it, but not an extensive thing that would have like revealed grandeur secrets as we went on. We definitely know more about Snake Mountain and definitely know more about Grayskull than we know about the actual three towers. Now, the three towers, when they did show up, however, later on, they finally showed up in an animation, Revelation, and it was Etrenia. So it was essentially their heaven. I mean, yeah, we're going to call it that. It was an afterlife. In fact, they even refer to it as an afterlife dimension. So now we know that the story has been altered. These are not towers that are buried on Eternia that will later rise up and form the ultimate battleground and like big secrets are revealed. This is now something else completely where three great magics once combined their powers together and formed a new dimension. And that new dimension formed these three towers, and they seem to be the center point of that afterlife dimension. The type of reward for having been a hero, or been a been a top flank, like super good person in your life, and so on and so forth. This hero's reward dimension. I don't know exactly where we're going to go with that. And I'm very interested to see if we play up the mythology and build even further inside of that dimension, such as now we know 3 magics created it. But the 3 emblems of 3 magics, one magic is not represented in that world, which is interesting to me because we saw that the snake magic, the Zor magic, and the Havoc magic, they all came together to create that dimension. But this, if you read the mini-comic, this seems to have something more to do with, the Middle Tower seems to have something more to do with, like, King Grayskull's queen, the Queen Grayskull. So I'm just interested to see where this mythology will build and where it's going to take us. I'm very interested to see how they play off this. But I think we've done more than enough looking at this while I just talk and ramble. Let's check this character out. Alright, here he is. Now, he comes with one item. His sword. That's it. The Sword of He, the Sword of Power, the Power Sword, whatever you want to call it. This right here is just a shiny blue version. Kind of a see-through-esque plastic. It's more opaque, really, but I wonder if this is a callback to the, if I remember right, in Classics, one of the swords came that kind of looked like this, and it was supposed to be the idea that the lineage of the sword back when it was first created housed all the power or something like that, and then later they channeled it into Grayskull, and then Grayskull acted as a conduit to send the power through the sword or something like that. I can't remember. I can't remember. I'd have to re-look up a little bit of the mythology. The mythology for this series is huge, and even though I've read literally all of it, like literally I've read all of it. I've read every single one of the comic books that came out until present date with the current Revelation comics. And yet that's a lot of reading, and unless you've went over it multiple times, things tend to get a little confused. But regardless, I am curious if that's what's going on here. So, let's check him out. Face, solid, I like it. I don't hate it at all. That's really good, actually. Especially for Origins, I like this gold. This seems like a minor thing, but gold. Why is it that so many of these characters come out and they promise gold? There's even gold in the pictures and whatnot, and then they come out and it's yellow. Stop doing that. This is perfect. This, when I saw the pictures, it was going to be gold. And here, it is gold. I love that he's got a symbol here. That's all gold. His cape, pretty solid. You could argue that it could be better. But look, here's my only issue with the cape. I was curious how they were going to do this. It's a Velcro strap that then kind of goes up and holds the best it can or whatever. And so it's working, but it is questionable, because I would love for these to kind of be up on his shoulders, like if they'd been glued here. And I guess I get that his head would have kind of gotten his way for that, so I get where they're going with it. And also, this is meant to be kind of a classic design toy. He's meant to seem classic, retro, and as such, we were lucky that if we got something like this, ever. Classic toys would have that little clip that would go onto his neck or something like that. And you'd always lose the capes. Like, remember that? You'd always have like a cape, a Batman cape, and then like you'd have 7 Batmans. They'd all be sharing one cape because you don't know what happened to all the other ones. But it is good. It is good. I think that it works. And also, not that it's too big of a thing, but since it's a Velcro, you could take this off. And if you had the proper strap or something like that, you could put it on other characters if you so desired. So this cape would be interchangeable because of the way they did it, where you could put it on other people. Like you could, if you have like the Red Sonja or something like that, and you found a way to Velcro it properly, you could give her the red cloak that she's famous for as well. Which I'm still waiting. Now we've got 2 figures, because we've got the loose collector one, and we've got the one that's coming from, is it called Epic? Those 2 figures, neither one of them comes with that red cloak that she's famous for. But regardless, I like this right here. He's got a symbol in his hair. That's cool. And overall, this is a solid figure. Put the sword in his hand. And actually, now that I'm stopping to think about it, Yeah, I was right. I just went off a guess. But yeah, that's his sword hand. He has 2 gripping hands. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but the picture here shows him with a gripping hand and an accentuation hand. And most of the He-Man figures that we've opened come that way. They come with a gripping hand and then a hand for like accentuation or posing or dramatic hand or whatever you want to call that, just an open hand. And that seems to be very normal in a lot of the He-Man figures, so that he can like hold the shield, or he can like set himself so like when he holds the shield, he can put one arm out, and they can, things like that. He could take those dramatic poses, or he can do something like this. He actually can't, because he got 2 gripping hands, so you can't necessarily recreate this scene. And even still, the retro figures do not have the up and down wrist, so the best that they can do for that scene is to just kind of hold the sword above them, which isn't necessarily right. But it's the best that you can do. This is as close as you can get to recreating that scene in all actuality when it comes to these figures, because they are retro figures. They have more retro movement, modern day articulation to a point, but more retro in terms of how they function. These are I'll rate them as toys that feel almost in the 90s era. But it is really cool. I like him. I do. I absolutely do. But I also tend to really like Grayskull. How does he compare to Masterverse Grayskull? So we're about to get very subjective here, because people are going to like certain things the way they like them, and that's the way that it goes. In terms of the paint and everything, I really like this. This feels right. He's the original, as far as I'm concerned. He came out first. He was the first Grayskull in this design that we got. And this is a modern-day Masterverse figure, where this is supposed to be if Grayskull had come out as part of the original toys. I'm sorry, bumped the camera. If he had come out years ago, back in the 80s, around 1982 or 1985, this is how they would have had to have done that figure. And it's solid. There's a lot of things here that I'm liking. I think the boots feel right. They're retro. The colors seem right. We got the gold. We got the bracers. They're a little bigger on him, but that was the fashion of the time, where his loincloth hangs down, which is a fashion of these figures, as opposed to just the yellow underwear shorts, like the furry underwear shorts. He has a power sword. He did not get these 2 swords. A little bit of a disappointment. Minor. Very minor. But I kind of wish I would have got to see these swords in a retro style for him to have, and we didn't get that. That's a little bit of a nitpick, but it is there. I would like to point it out. So we're not 100% on the way that this is done here, because to me it feels like... But then again, maybe you could argue, had they done this figure all the way back then, he would have just got a complete power sword. But then again, since the storyline at the time was that the power sword was like 2 different halves, and you put it together to form the main power sword, then maybe the idea should have been that he would have come with both halves. He would have just came with both halves and been holding them right at the bat. But then by the time that this guy would have been added to the line, maybe you could argue that's not right. And by this time they were already selling He-Mans with the complete power sword anyway. So there's argument to be had that this is very right and they made the right decision here. Though it really would have been cool to see these 2 blades in a retro fashion for him. The emblem on the chest is still really cool, but I do, of course, prefer this. I prefer Masterverse. 100%. I have preferred it, and I will prefer it as we go forward. It's just something I know about myself. I've admitted it to myself at this point. I like the cape. This is still a retro version of that cape, where this actually got the wireframe and everything like that and was allowed to be a little more crazy and kind of move all over the place and everything. But I could also argue that there's been a mess up in this figure. Because the cape, it kind of hangs down. This has been a problem of the Masterverse cape design, where this doesn't seem to have the same problem. It goes all the way up and it doesn't have this weird awkward area right here that unless you cover it up with that, it kind of looks awkward. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. One of my straps has actually come loose here. Oh, and there's that tag. I forgot. I think that's actually the reason my strap is loose, is because I was going to cut that tag off. But I never actually came back to do it. There we go. Let me get that in there. 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 Now it's nice and tight, and he's got his belt on and everything like that. I do, of course, still prefer the Masterverse, but I think this guy is fantastically done to revert him to a style that makes sense for that time. Especially another thing that's kind of not really called out, but I think it does deserve a little bit of attention. His head is bigger, which is a thing in the retro-esque line, the Origins line. The figures' heads tend to be a bit bigger than the Masterverse heads, which is funny because if you take the Masterverse heads off and kind of manipulate them so that they'll go onto the Origin bodies, which you can do, if you do that, they tend to have smaller heads than the rest of the figures in the line, because the figures in the line for that line do tend to have bigger, more expressive heads. But overall, I think this is a fantastic representation, kind of retroing this figure into this style. I think it works very well. I am actually very impressed. But, yes, this has not changed my opinion. I still think Masterverse is the superior line here. And that's pretty much everything I have to say currently about King Grayskull. I do not regret jumping into the line early. Real question. Would it have bothered me to miss out on him? Maybe not. Now, this comes down to a collector's standard. I prefer Masterverse over Origin. I don't have a nostalgia build here. I don't. I got into the line and got into the property where I got into it. And there are videos that will explain that to you if you want to know where I'm coming from. You can check out the Masterverse playlist if you want, the Motu playlist. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there where I talk about the fact that I got into this at a later age and do not have the nostalgia driven to it that a lot of other people do. These were not my childhood toys. So the idea that this guy comes out and he looks like one of those toys, and that excites a lot of people that kind of grew up in this line, I don't have that. I have this. This is my line. This is where I start. So because of that, had I missed out on him, there probably would have been a little bit of slight regret, maybe, but that's pushing it. I don't think that it would have bothered me all that much to have not gotten one of these, but I am happy that I jumped in as early as I did, and I got one. I think he's going to look really cool down there at the towers. So that's what I've got here. This has not changed my opinion on Origins versus Masterverse. I still prefer the Masterverse line, and I think the Masterverse line is getting better with almost every single character it releases. Origins also, I would argue, has been significantly getting better. There are things that Origins is currently doing that has me very interested, like the cartoon line, and even some of this Power of Grayskull stuff that's going to start coming out now, or at least the indication that it's going to start coming out. Some of the stuff that I think I see coming down the line makes me feel like there's some real stuff on the horizon that I want. Like, one thing I would have definitely regretted if I wouldn't have got him is if they do release a Queen Grayskull. If they release a Queen Grayskull, and I want her for sure, it would be a real shame to get her and then have missed out on getting him and then had to find a way to go get him later on, or had to have customized one of my own. I'm not against the idea of customizing or even paying somebody to customize a figure that I don't have that I want, but there's something about having the original artist's interpretation sitting on the shelf rather than something that I had to make because they wouldn't do it. There is difference, and there's good things and bad things to that too, because like I also said about the Red Sonja, you could make the perfect Red Sonja if you had the skills to do so, or if you wanted to pay somebody that could do it. You could have that Sonja on your shelf, but there is something to be said for having the loose collector variant, the one that they designed, that has a very specific artistic integrity designed by that sculptor that you then enjoy that way. But just like people that buy into Mythic Legions, there's some people that buy Mythic Legions because they want the Four Horsemen interpretation. They want that design, that artistic line. They want it to look that way. But there are a lot of people that buy them and customize them off of that point because they like the build, but they want to be able to add their own flair. And that's very much understood in that line, so they sell you all the things that you would need to be able to do that. Like, that's awesome. And it's just another thing about toys that really drags us in, that changes this hobby. Because this isn't like other hobbies. When you watch movies, you watch movies. That's what you do. You see the movie. There's endless interpretations to what the movie is trying to say. But you don't have any influence on that. You, unless you are super hardcore, do not go back into the movie and alter the movie or find just the part that you like. You get what I'm talking about. That's not the way that it works. It's just like video games. Video games. Maybe, and we'll just tag this all the way back because recently the Tomb Raider, the pack came out. You love Tomb Raider 2. You love specifically the third level in Tomb Raider 2. Every time you go to play that game, you got to get back to that level. You get the idea? You can't just... Toys are different, man. Toys are a different hobby altogether. It's not just the artist's interpretation that you get on your shelf. There is something to be said for how you collect it, how you want to display it, how you feel that the character represents you, what you see that somebody else might look over. It's interesting. It's infinitely interesting how these little pieces of plastic can mean so much in different ways that people aren't considering. But I think that's about it. I don't think I need to drag this out any further. He's going down there. He's going to go downstairs literally right now and go in the castle, probably get a picture or two with him, and he's going to go back on the shelf. But I'm more than happy to have added Grayskull to the shelf. I'm happy that I was an early bird. But, final note, I probably wouldn't have been that disappointed had I missed out on him. But I'm not an Origins-focused collector. Later on.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.